So, 13 years of waiting, 13 years of rumors, 13 years of anticipation, and 13 years of, doubting whether this movie was going to get freaking made or not. As we finally sat down in a theater at the end of last year, put on our 3D glasses again, thinking, wow, remember when the first one made everyone think that 3D was going to be a thing in every movie from now on? Damn, I'm getting old. But in all seriousness, I was 11 when the first one came out, and it blew me away. I owned a Blu-ray copy of it, and I watched it very often. It might be one of my favorite movies, to be honest. And back in late 2009, that was a cool thing to say, because the film broke all sorts of records and everyone was loving every minute of it. It got nominated for Best Picture at the Oscars. I mean, the praises were coming from all directions. But for some reason, as the years went by, it sort of became popular to hate on this movie. Suddenly calling this film overrated on the internet became the cool thing instead. So, what the hell happened? Well, it made money. Like, lots of it. Yeah, apparently that's an issue for some reason. Everyone was so pissed 3 years ago when Avengers Endgame didn't overtake it as the biggest movie ever. And yeah, the hype around Endgame was probably bigger, I get it. And obviously the MCU hadn't turned into a f***ing joke yet, but we don't talk about that on this channel. At least not yet. But anyway, the point is that I was really excited for this movie. Especially after a whole year of miserable big franchise and big IP cringe-inducing failures, I saw this film as a breath of fresh air. And that music from the first trailer, oh my god. I literally went to watch Multiverse of Madness, fully expecting it to suck, mainly just to see the trailer for Avatar 2 on the big screen. And I also went to watch the original when it was re-released in theaters as well. And then, the movie finally came out, and I was disappointed. But before any of that, let me remind you that according to my analytics, almost all of my recent viewers are not subscribed to me yet. So please, if you enjoy the content, hit that red subscribe button, drop the video a like, and now, on with the video. Now this isn't going to be a very in-depth essay, because I'm sure that there's hours worth of great content out there already that goes deeply into scrutinizing this movie. But regardless of how in-depth your opinion is or not, I feel like most people either love bashing the two Avatar movies, or defending both of them against all odds. And I was certainly one of the defenders. But now that I've seen the sequel, I feel like I'm now one of the few people that stands somewhere in between. Now let me be clear, I still very much like this franchise. I'm still excited for its future. Although I will say two major things about the sequel. The first is that the visuals were unsurprisingly unbelievable. But that's the thing, we expected that. But I just have a couple of important nitpicks regarding those visuals. And also, I think that this movie's story was quite weak, its characters were sadly quite forgettable, and its pacing and runtime were both poorly managed. But don't misunderstand me, this isn't a bad movie, but I wouldn't really call it a great one either. The first was a pretty good movie. It sure had a classic story that we all know already, but it had a unique twist by being set in this incredible new world to feast our eyes with. It was indeed a little predictable, but it was helped by the fact that it was a technological marvel, because it set the standards for other movie blockbusters that over-rely on CGI to show how good these movies can actually look. However, the first movie and this one are 13 years apart. I mean, let that sink in. Which brings me to my biggest issue, the story. Again, going back to the original, what made it compelling was that Jake Sully was a human in disguise, technically helping plot the Na'vi's own downfall, with a true feeling of the literal fate of Pandora hanging in the balance by the end. The story was indeed simple in essence, but still satisfying. Yet in the sequel, the story's more or less simple again, but it's not that satisfying. Now, Jake and his family arrive at the Water Tribe an hour in. Until then, I was really enjoying the film, but then the plot just slows down the pace. The movie literally just turns into this teenage high school movie, with bullies and everything. And this goes on for so long. Although I do think that the idea of putting Jake and his family into this literal fish out of water situation, where they literally have to learn the way of water, therefore making us, the audience, learn along with them, is very neat. Why not just focus more on that? But that brings me to another issue. There's way too many characters. I mean, why did Jake and Neytiri need 2 biological children and like a clone of Grace and a human as well that they adopt? I mean, what? Why so many? You think I'm exaggerating? Alright then, be honest. Did you know the name of Jake and Neytiri's son when he died? Because I'm sure as hell I didn't. Wait, he's called Neteyam. Neteyam. Yes, I literally had to Google his name.
Oh no, he died!
Like, the scene is tragic because I care about Jake and Neytiri, and losing a son must be one of the most horrific experiences anyone can go through, but I didn't know anything about him, because this story didn't need so many characters. When Neytiri goes on a rampage, for example, and is completely blinded by rage, that was awesome. That was such an interesting progression of her character. The portrayal of a mother's rage. That is an instinct as old as time itself. That is so interesting. But too little too late, because Neytiri had nothing to do in the movie. So when this actually happens, it comes across as almost out of place. Like it belongs in a different movie or some extended edition of some shit. So instead of focusing on Loak and his best buddy, the talking whale, why aren't we focusing on Jake?
Jake! My guy Jake, Sully!
And Neytiri. This is their franchise. And what about the conflict? All we get is this brief exposition scene with the resurrected bad guy, yes, I also forgot his name, being shortly briefed on the state of Earth, about how the humans are trying to turn Pandora into the new home for humanity. Why can't we see more of that? Imagine how much more interesting it would have been to have scenes literally take place on Earth. The only ones we've ever had are on the extended edition of the first one. And I looked up the transcript for The Way of Water, and do you want to know how many times the word Earth appears in the whole script? 5 times. In over 3 hours of runtime. We know literally nothing of what's going on in our own planet. All we get told is that it's dying. That's it. So once again, imagine what it would have been like to have scenes showing how the Earth is dying. Maybe it got too polluted, maybe climate change spiraled out of control because of global warming, maybe there was a war. But in any case, showcasing the suffering going on in our own planet could maybe make the human characters, which are still supposed to be us by the way, come across as more, human. Come across as human beings. Ones that we can be sympathetic towards and understand more as to why they are so desperate to take over Pandora. Because this franchise thus far has utterly wasted so much untapped potential when it comes to the relationship between the Na'vi and the humans. And let me give you an example of what I mean. I'm Mexican, right? And back in school, we were taught about a man named Hernan Cortez, who was a conquistador who led the downfall of the Aztec Empire. Now in real life, as you can imagine, things weren't so black and white. It wasn't just the white Spanish Empire against the pre-Hispanic tribes, because in real life historians will tell you that the Aztecs conquered dozens. In fact, I even remember reading the word hundreds being thrown around, of other rival tribes that they forced to pay taxes, or in the worst of cases, turn them into slaves. So as you can imagine, plenty of those tribes didn't particularly like the Aztecs. So quite a few of them allied themselves with Hernan Cortez to throw down the Aztec Empire. You see where I'm going with this? This story is so black and white. All the humans are arrogant dickheads that want to destroy and pollute Pandora like they did with Earth. While all the Na'vi are these beautiful, innocent, pure beings that have this connection with their own planet. Oh, aren't they lovely? No, they're not, because that's boring. So imagine a version of this movie with scenes depicting the state of Earth that show why the humans are willing to go to such desperate lengths, where these more sympathetic humans convince rival tribes to join them, given that such rival tribes perhaps envy the riches and power that Taruk Maktoum and his tribe have accumulated after defeating the humans, and with human traitors that end up joining the Na'vi in defense of Pandora. That would have been so interesting. That would have been unique and real. Because if this were to truly happen, then the conflict probably wouldn't be so black and white. But no, instead we got this teenage drama with this boy and his friend, the talking whale. Now, I love humpback whales. I think they are some of the most gorgeous and majestic creatures in the world. Their songs are some of the most beautiful sounds anyone can hear on Earth. But why do these ones talk? Like, I'm not kidding when I tell you that I struggled not to literally laugh out loud when the whale started talking. And how the hell are they talking anyway? Which brings me to my second point. Although again, this is more of a nitpick rather than an actual critique of Avatar 2 as a film. Now, I obviously love the amount of creativity being put into creating the world of Pandora, but in return, in the few instances where there is a lack of creativity, it really bothers me. Which obviously sounds like blasphemy, I know, but since I'm so into movie monsters and creatures, I'm really hard to impress when it comes to creature design in movies compared to the average person. I'm not saying that these whales don't look great, I'm saying that they're just a way less beautiful copy of a humpback whale. Because there are other animals in this franchise, like this thing for example. It blends in a jaguar, an alien, and maybe even dinosaur-esque features into one animal. And this great white shark equivalent looks primal with that gaping mouth. It reminds me of the real extinct Doncleosteus for example. Or this ugly kaiju from Pacific Rim. It combines so many aspects of real animals, both alive and extinct, to create something that comes across as unique. While the whales are just whales, but a bit alien looking. And then these water Na'vi guys are just a different tone of blue, with like different tails. I don't know, I guess I was expecting a little more creativity in how they dress and what their tools are like. Because again, think about going back to real world examples. Think of how different a tribe living in Eastern Asia 20,000 years ago would be from a tribe living in what is now southern Italy. But again, the Na'vi are supposed to be beautiful because we're supposed to like them, so we can't change them too much. Maybe my point is that since the first one blew us away so much visually, that I was expecting this one to go, right, it's been 13 years, and we can't recapture the same magic. But if we can get as creative as possible, and hit the audience often with things they would have never seen coming, and maybe we can make them go wow again. So to finish off my point on the creature design, I think that indeed there are plenty of animals that combine so many different things that they come across as unique. This is a nitpick, but all I'm saying is that there are creatures like these plesiosaur dolphins and these horses with more legs and pollen diets that would have been a lot more interesting if they were just not so clearly based around famous animals alive or dead. I mean, the possibilities were kinda endless, and I'm sure that a lot of time and effort did go into researching how real tribes look and how they act, use them as inspiration, as well as looking at the real natural world for inspiration for Pandora. But just a part of me thinks that they could have done a lot more in terms of creativity after 13 years. Because coming back to the story side of things, the film ended up being a little bit boring at times, to be honest. The second act drags for literally over an hour, making for a film with honestly pretty terrible pacing. And the final conflict just doesn't have the stakes of the first one. But if they want to keep making more movies about the fate of Pandora, why not just keep the stakes as high as last time? And I also don't feel the conflict between Miles Quaritch and Jake, even though I really should. I don't know why they brought him back. He wasn't a memorable villain to begin with. They never gave him a great motivation, and he was kinda forgettable. Again, I literally had to Google his freaking name while making this video, and I honestly still don't find him all that interesting, even though he's had 2 damn 3-hour movies to work with. And the story also no longer focuses on Jake. I feel like for at least half the film or thereabouts, his son is literally more important to the story. But the son's boring as shit. So when the movie's ending and Jake's narrating again, I was like, this feels so off. Because it literally didn't feel like his story anymore. We didn't get enough of Jake in his own movie, and we didn't get enough of Neytiri either. I shouldn't have to Google all the names of their sons and daughters, like I'm not making this up. I literally knew none of their names. And by the time I released this video, I would probably have already forgotten about them again anyway. So in a nutshell, I think that this franchise's greatest strength is still its setting, its Pandora, and its world building, but we still only get half the picture because we have no idea what's happening on Earth, and this is making such conflict come across as extremely predictable and a little shallow. And I know I'm making it seem like I hate this movie, but I really don't. I'm glad that it made a shit ton of money just like the last one, because this film doesn't have any political agenda bullshit behind it. It's just a guy and his team trying to tell the story. That's it. I was just expecting something incredible because this was 13 years in the making, and I just hope that the next films take more risks and aren't so afraid to explore their own franchise's strengths in new and more interesting ways, because in the end, I was simply left a little disappointed. And thanks once again for sticking until the end of the video. The support on the channel has been great lately. I mean, look at that. Well over 1,000 subscribers by now. Thank you guys so much. So if you want to keep up such positive feedback, please feel free to subscribe, hit the bell, drop me a comment on whether you agree or not, follow me on Twitter, and this is all I've got for now. But I sure hope to see you all around here very often. But this is me signing off.